It is now my pleasure to introduce to you Paul Grogan. Paul is the president and CEO of the Boston Foundation. He came to the foundation in 2001 from Harvard University, where he was the vice president of government, community, and public affairs. From 1986 through 1998, Grogan was president and CEO of the nonprofit Local Initiative Support Corporation, LISC, the nation's largest community development intermediary, which under his leadership raised and invested more than $3 billion of private capital in the inner-city revitalization efforts across the United States. Grogan is co-author of Comeback Cities, a blueprint for urban neighborhood revival, which was published in 2000. Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Grogan.
Michael, thank you so much for that gracious introduction, and even more for hosting this very important event this morning. You alluded to the fact that many of us may be here for the first time or hearing about the Institute for the first time, but I think it's safe to say that under Michael Taylor's leadership, we're going to be hearing a lot about this Institute going forward, and this venerable institution has new life, and it absolutely is going to play a crucial role in training our young people for promising careers in technical fields. So it's just terrific to be here, and thank you for sharing those wonderful stories. And it confirms that once again today we're reclaiming Boston's place in the forefront of technological innovation. It is one of the proud legacies of this community going back hundreds of years, but it is a legacy that must be renewed and refreshed by every generation, and that is part of what we hope to do today. I do have the privilege of heading the Boston Foundation, Greater Boston's community foundation. We are a 90-year-old charity, not quite as venerable as the Institute, but we've been around a while ourselves. We currently have assets of about $730 million, and the foundation and its donors make over $50 million a year to Boston area nonprofits. But another thing that we like to do is to be the sponsor of robust public discussions about the issues and challenges of the day. And it is really in that role that we're here today, because we have had the privilege of working with the Museum of Science, Councilor John Tobin, and Mayor Menino on ripening this issue of Wi-Fi for the city. And I think it has ripened very, very nicely. All of you are aware that the mayor last week at the annual meeting of the Massachusetts Technology Leadership Council in effect took one of our lead recommendations by appointing a very high-powered task force. Two of the co-chairs of that task force are here today. You're going to hear from one of them in a moment, Rick Burns, but I want to introduce Joyce Plotkin, the head of the Massachusetts Technological Leadership Council. Joyce, stand up, please. The mayor has called on an absolutely first-rate group of people, taken ownership of this issue, and I think we can all be confident that with the aid of the work that is being presented today, that the city is going to move forward very, very quickly on this, and as I said, put Boston once again in a position of national leadership on this. This is a wonderful audience today, a great mix of people from different agencies, the political world, the business world, the technical world. My own bow to the technical world is that I'm not wearing my suit jacket up here, because of the informality, the fabled informality of the technical world. Thank you, thank you. I will put it on right after this, though. There's a lot at stake here for Boston, as I think we all know. We are a center of technology and innovation. If we don't move quickly on this, that certainly is not in keeping with that role that we want to play in the nation and the world. But there's also a tremendous issue of access. As many of us know, probably only about 50% of the city proper's population have wired internet access. Part of the promise of Wi-Fi is very inexpensive, much more widespread access for people who are here, and of course, very importantly, for the many visitors, travelers, and business people who come to our community as well. So there's a lot at stake here, but I could not be more confident that, as I said, the issue is ripened, it is on the move, and the right people are taking hold of it. It's now my pleasure to introduce another chair of the Mayor's Task Force, my good friend Rick Burns, who was one of the pioneers in the venture capital business in America as a co-founder of Charles River Ventures, one of the leading venture capital firms in the nation. That's another proud tradition that Boston has of business and financial innovation. Rick is a very prominent and important citizen of this community. I'll just mention two roles that I think are very important. He's the chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Museum of Science, another sponsor of this study today, and even more important to me, he is a member of the board of the Boston Foundation. So it's my great pleasure to introduce Rick Burns.
Thank you. And Paul, thank you. Your exaggeration is appreciated. I want to start by congratulating the team that has pushed this report to where it's come to today, because I have watched it both from the Museum of Science and from the Boston Foundation, and there are 3 or 4 people who really should be identified as having made it happen. And actually, I didn't learn until this morning exactly who they think started it. And it turns out that Councilor Tobin is really given credit for pushing to get the whole thing started. And it's one thing for us in our institutions to try to push something like this through, but John has been giving us the community input, which is so important. The next person is Gita Pradholm from the museum, from the foundation, who's headed up their community technology effort. And she's been involved in this sort of thing for a long while and has really done a terrific job. Kudos. And the third person that really should be identified here is Brian Warby from the Museum of Science. And he has the experience of having put up a hotspot in the museum and having run the Wi-Fi Summit at the museum last year. And so we thank you for all your work. I should also mention Mike Cudahy, who was one of the writers of the report and who provided the technical input to make sure it all got put together. Thank you, Mike. And while we're thanking people, I would like to mention the effort that the mayor's office has put into this. And I must say, watching this effort come together, I was worried that might be a source of drag, and that might be delayed in getting a task force put together. And the fact that the mayor's office was able to move as rapidly as they did in such an expeditious manner, it just shows that our city government really is working well. They were able to get their announcement made before our announcement was done, and that's really the way it should be if possible. And also, just on a very personal note, I want to thank him for allowing me to work with Joyce Plotkin and Jim Cash as co-chairs of the task force. You know, this is an important time for Boston, and it should be very interesting, an interesting few months to get this done. And I know we're very fortunate to have Joyce to keep us focused. She's good at that. She's very good at that. You know, we're all very fortunate to be living in the beginning of the digital age, because this is opening up major new opportunities for all of us that simply were not available to our parents or any of the previous generations. And one of the ways that I like to think about this, both in my activities at the museum and in my work as a venture capitalist, is that this is a time of transition. It's a time of transition from when the world was described in stories and in words to a time when the world is being described in information and numbers. And unless people are able to make that transition during our lifetimes, they're going to be left behind. Now, the World Wide Web opens up new vistas of information, and one of the ways I look at this is that unless people have the information that is available to them, the volume of information that's available to them on the web, they will not be able to make the informed decisions that are necessary in today's complex lives. And I think that unless they have the access to the web, they will simply not be part of the growing 21st century. And they really must understand the importance of this information in their lives. And this is something that our schools can teach them. It's something that our institutions can bring to the members of our community. But this cannot be done unless we have low-cost broadband access available to all of our citizens. You know, Boston, as Paul mentioned, has been an innovation leader for over 200 years. You know, it's hard to imagine today that shipbuilding was the high-tech of the first part of the 19th century. And the Boston shipbuilders were better than anybody else, and we were able to send a ship to China and back because of technology. And the same thing is true, and the telephone was mentioned earlier. Michael mentioned the telephone. You know, right down here on Milk Street, the first telephone call was made, and Boston has spread that technology all over the world. And in order to maintain this technological leadership, we have to educate our population in a way that allows us to maintain a competitive position with the rest of this increasingly flat world. I think another aspect of the web that I would just mention is that it has the potential to bring communities together. And by all having the same access to information and understanding what's going on in the same way, it brings people together, it allows them to communicate, and therefore strengthens the communities. And this in the long run is probably as important a factor behind the web as any other. To date, broadband web access has been very expensive. To get it in our homes or businesses today costs a minimum of $40 to $50 a month, and it's a very expensive tool. And the objective of the report and of our task force is to eliminate that barrier. Fortunately, there are new technologies, new wireless technologies that are available. In fact, in my position as a venture capitalist, we're seeing new ideas coming in all the time to make it cheaper and cheaper. In fact, the FCC is going to be taking action within the next couple of weeks on a proposal to open up additional spectrum to make broadband more available to more people. And this is really good news for all of us. Today, a lot of people are denied access to the web because of cost. And we're hopefully going to solve that problem. The key to this is going to be to figure out what the segments of the market are so that there still can be an attractive commercial side of broadband, but yet make the low end of broadband available to the community at an attractive price. In a few minutes, we're going to open up the floor to all of your comments and questions. You know, input from the community is going to be very important to the task force. We really need to know what all of you are thinking, and we thank you for coming today and hope that in the next, while you're listening to the report from the individuals that wrote it, that you think about what you'd like to put into our heads, and I hope as the months go by here that you will continue to stay involved and let us know what you're thinking. It's very important. So we look forward to hearing from you in the future. Paul?
It's a particular pleasure for me now to introduce City Councilor John Tobin. Particular pleasure because, among other things, he's my city councilor as a Jamaica Plain resident. He was first elected to the council in 2001, representing District 6, which is Jamaica Plain, West Roxbury, and Roslindale. He was reelected in 2003 and 2005, and he has been a tremendous leader on this issue. We wouldn't be here today without Councilor Tobin. He's also a great champion of the arts in our city. He is really making an enormous contribution in his political role. So, John?
Good morning, and thank you to Mr. Grogan for his very gracious remarks. It's great to share the stage with Rick, but also with Paul and Michael, two of my favorite constituents from Jamaica Plain. And it's a pleasure to be here at the Benjamin Franklin Institute of Technology today for the presentation of Boston Unplugged, Mapping a Wireless Future. And I won't go any further without acknowledging, I get a lot of credit on this, but without acknowledging my staff. I'd like them to stand, Liz Sullivan, Elaine Gowdy, Tammy Glacken, Dave Isberg, Robert Orthman. A big round of applause for them as well. Well, they did. The slogan in our office is, there is no I in team, but thank God there's one in Tobin. So, I like that one myself. The Franklin Institute is an appropriate setting for this announcement. Last month, we marked the 300th anniversary of Benjamin Franklin's birthday, one of our founding fathers who is remembered as a visionary scientist and inventor. Benjamin Franklin's inventions and discoveries changed the way people lived. Today, we have the opportunity to do the same. Before we get to the report findings, I wanted to give you a little background on how far we have come. I became interested in wireless technology a few years ago upon listening to one of my other favorite constituents, George Fifield of Jamaica Plain. We wanted to learn more how it could be used to benefit our city. We quickly learned that Boston needed to have a citywide conversation on this very important issue. In early 2005, our office convened a Wi-Fi task force and began planning the city's first Wi-Fi summit. I will also point out, after we introduced this measure in the City Council, I was fortunate, very fortunate, to run into another great constituent, Gita Pradhan, in the basement of Bromley Heath task force. And Gita had said that the foundation had been having discussions on Wi-Fi. If not for that conversation and the Boston Foundation and meeting Gita, this would, I would say, we would never have got off the ground to be here where we're standing today. We also reached out to a very diverse cross-section of creative and talented people for this task force. We included wireless technology experts, neighborhood leaders, educators, government officials, business people, and not-for-profit representatives. We asked them to help us put an event together. I am proud to say that the Wi-Fi Summit was a huge success. More than 300 people joined us at the Museum of Science, where we talked about the challenges of implementing Wi-Fi in the city of Boston. We discussed what was going on in other cities around the country, and we tried to learn from their experiences. The number of people that attended the summit and the level of enthusiasm that was generated there shows that Boston is, in fact, excited about Wi-Fi. Today, access to the wireless networks that support the technology is limited in Boston. Expanding wireless service in our neighborhoods would give people more choices about where, when, and how they use computers in their daily lives. It would also bring people together by getting them out from behind their desks and into our communities. As many of you know, and it was mentioned by Paul Grogan, last week Mayor Thomas Menino announced the appointment of a Wi-Fi task force to explore how wireless networks could be expanded in Boston. He chose a stellar panel of experts, several of whom are here today and who have been working on this issue for some time. And we're excited to be working with them. And this is welcome news, and we look forward to hearing their recommendations this summer. The growing availability and popularity of Wi-Fi presents our city with a great opportunity and enormous possibilities. Wi-Fi could help us educate our children, enhance local business districts, bolster tourism, and so much more. We need to keep pace with residents' computer needs and provide the infrastructure to support wireless technology across our city. We need to examine how Wi-Fi could be used to make Boston a better place to live, work, and visit. If Boston wants to stay competitive, we need to make sure the latest technology is easily available. We are making progress. Today, free wireless is offered at all the city's public library branches. And I also want to acknowledge the president of the Boston Public Library, another constituent, Bernie Margolis, is in the audience as well. And he has been terrific and very helpful in this issue, and I appreciate it. Main Streets is making Wi-Fi available in our neighborhood business districts, and Brian Goodman from Main Streets is here as well. In fact, it began with a pilot program in West Roxbury and Rosendale, part of my district and my home. And the Boston Police Department is exploring ways to use Wi-Fi to enhance public safety in all of our neighborhoods. Community organizations and tenant groups all over the city are finding new and creative ways to bring Wi-Fi into people's homes and into their lives. We are moving forward, but we need more help. Today, we are seeing groundbreaking collaborations between technology giants and municipalities in other parts of the country. Google in San Francisco, Earthlink in Philadelphia. We should watch these developments closely and learn from their efforts. Some of Boston's biggest success stories are the result of creative partnerships. This is a great opportunity for us to work together. Public officials, community leaders, technology experts, and businesses to make Wi-Fi in Boston a reality. This report is a big step forward. It is a great example of what we can accomplish when we work together. Now I'd like to introduce you to the authors of Boston Unplugged and tell you a little bit about them. Geeta Pradhan is the program director for the Boston Foundation. She also manages the Foundation's not-for-profit sector strategy and its technology-focused New Economy initiative. Geeta is co-creator of the Boston Indicators Project and co-authored its 2000 and 2002 reports. Michael Cudahy is an issues writer and researcher. He was executive director of Elliot Richardson's CRG PAC, national communications director for the Republican Majority for Choice, and has done work for a variety of organizations, including the Disabled Veterans of America. And Brian Werby, who's become a great friend and a supporter throughout this whole process, is Vice President of Information Systems and Resources at the Museum of Science. Among many other things, Brian's work focuses on the museum's technological and educational initiatives. And before I turn over the program to this great panel, I'd like to take this opportunity once again to thank President Taylor for hosting today's event and the great staff here, and Paul Grogan and Geeta Pradhan from the Boston Foundation, Yanis Maialis, the president of the Museum of Science, and Brian Werby, who we're going to hear from, Michael Cudahy, obviously, Boston Wireless Advocacy Group, BTS Partners, and everyone who participated in helping us get where we are today. I really appreciate it and look forward to today's presentation. Thanks so much.
There are disadvantages to being short. I cannot see everyone. All right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for all that you have done to make this day possible, because as you'll see in the presentation we've made, this would never be possible if it wasn't for the commitment of community, of business, and government. This presentation will give you a quick snapshot of the report we are releasing today. Boston Unplugged, Mapping a Wireless Future, has grown out of several community conversations and local research. It aims to bring before you two things. First, it will present the rationale backed with some data on why a wireless broadband strategy makes sense for the future of Boston. And secondly, it will provide information on what is happening in Boston and beyond that can and should be taken into consideration as we are developing a strategy for a citywide strategy. Our presentation will be in three parts. I will present the rationale and the data, which will be followed by Brian Werby to my right, who will present, who will give you a sense of all the local energy and experimentation that is going on in Boston. And we will close with Michael Cudahy, who will tell us about what is happening in the world around us. You all must be wondering why you haven't seen copies of the report. The copies will be handed out as you leave. They will be handed out in the lobby as you leave. Boston has a wealth of technological talent, a history of innovation, a progressive administration, and a deep understanding of the value of technology for individuals and communities, for government efficiency, for business and corporate competitiveness. And as this report will show you, Boston is poised for a citywide broadband strategy. Our local technology landscape indicates a wealth of experimentation that has been happening in the city, and this experimentation is happening in low-income housing developments, in government, and in institutions and in businesses. However, we do need a public-private strategy, a partnership to really take us to the next level of productivity, efficiency, and competitiveness. A concerted effort can, we believe, position Boston as a vibrant, world-class city with opportunity for all, a leader in innovation and an important force in the global economy. This quote captures the essence and the context of the recommendation that we are making. It makes 3 basic points. First, Boston's assets include a history of innovation and its reputation as a world-class city. Second, it is a player in a rapidly evolving global economy that is increasingly driven by information and knowledge. And third, to maintain its position, Boston must invest in a communications infrastructure that is sophisticated, in that it meets and even leads world standards, is affordable, that it creates opportunity for all Bostonians, is high speed, and allows for adequate upload capacity to enable innovation even from your home. Why wireless? Well, as we looked at this issue, we found that it is an affordable option that can be implemented quickly and inexpensively. It is already deployed by local communities, institutions, and businesses. A host of the local efforts that are already going on create a wonderful learning environment for us from which we can build to a citywide network. And most importantly, time is of the essence as other cities move ahead, threatening our competitive edge. I'm going to, the report has a list of recommendations that actually emerged from the series of conversations that we had and the dialogue on this issue. We have captured the essence of those conversations in a bunch of recommendations that we are offering to the task force, and we hope that you will consider them. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go through all of the recommendations that we put forward, but I'm going to highlight a few key issues that I think are very important. One, the importance of a consistently upgradable system. I think as Rick talked, the pace of technology change is so fast that before you can even put up something, and I think we all know that with our computers, the moment you put up something, it's obsolete. So to build into the thinking a system that can continue to change and adapt over time. The importance of high speed to enable innovation. The importance of in-home access, and I cannot stress that one enough. Several cities have moved forward and talked about public access to the parks, the cafes, the businesses, but it really is in the in-home setting that a child learns, that a parent advances his or her skills, that brilliant geeks experiment. So it's really the in-home access that I think is a very critical issue, and we would really like to sort of stress that. The other point that we want to make is the importance of a scalable network. We have a lot of experimentation, and actually by some measures, Boston is already a wireless city. If you look at the universities, the hospitals, institutions like the Museum of Science, the low-income housing developments that have already deployed Wi-Fi, the cafes, the businesses, we can almost say that, we have something that is already wireless. It just needs to be connected, and there could be ways that we should be thinking of that are smart, inexpensive, that enable us to connect and really build out a network really quickly. The establishment of a realistic time frame is another issue that we want to underscore very strongly. Philadelphia and San Francisco went ahead and announced very aggressive timelines. And I have to say that as I've talked to people from those cities, I was recently in San Francisco for a conference, there is some level of frustration in the community because it's taking so long. So the realistic time frame issue. And then the public-private partnership. I think several people talked about Benjamin Franklin's having established the first public-private partnership. I think Paul talked about it, Rick talked about it, Councillor Tobin talked about it. This is a really critical issue, and from our perspective, for two reasons. One is that the public part of the partnership enables you to bring the accountability and the staying power that public institutions bring. And the private sector part of the partnership enables us to bring to this effort the nimbleness, the innovation that that is very prevalent in the private sector. So the idea of bringing these two things together really offers a tremendous amount of strength. And finally, we have come to this point because of the energy and the investment and the civic will of people, and we will go beyond and continue to maintain a really powerful strategy and a powerful network for the long haul if we continue to stay involved. So as a community, as a civic community, the importance is critical. So where are we today? We will look at a little bit of the data and the rationale, as I mentioned, to give you a sense of where we are today. In looking at our competitive advantage, our key industry areas that are our lead industry areas that put us in the forefront of the global economy are education, healthcare, and financial services. Massachusetts is a leading technology state, and our status as that leading technology state comes from our ability to innovate. Massachusetts has the highest number of patents per 100,000 residents, as noted by Mass Technology Collaborative's Innovation Index, which compares Massachusetts with 9 other leading technology states. We have a history of innovation that includes the invention of the telephone in 1876, Marconi's radio and first radio transmission in 1903, email in 72, Ethernet in 73, the World Wide Web in 89, and most recently, the $100 computer in 2005. Boston has a wealth of remarkable talent, and when you combine that talent with the knowledge of community and the energy of community, we are already starting to see some pretty fabulous results. These factors really position Boston well to compete in the global economy. Like other cities, we are not without our challenges. A changing population with growing needs is an issue that we will talk some more about later, just after this. We have a shrinking but still existent digital divide. We have declining federal and state investment in public higher education, and that is really important, particularly as you look at the demographics of the city. There are threats to our competitiveness and our image as a world-class city, as other cities and states and countries invest in science and technology education. In fact, China and Japan produce twice the number of science and technology graduates as compared to the United States. And the fact that others are building out their information structure to connect with the rest of the world and providing access to their residents pretty quickly. So let's look at some of the data. Boston's population is changing, and as I said, we continue to have a digital divide. And I'm going to point to a couple of things. This is Boston's population in 1990 and 2000, and as you can see that in 2000, Boston actually achieved a majority-minority status. So for the first time, the populations of color grew. Now, on the idea of a multicultural cosmopolitan city is a very exciting idea. It sort of makes for a real melting pot and a wonderful city. We will grow, we are growing, and will continue to grow through immigration. But the problem here is that when you look at what the populations that are growing, this is the African American, the Latino populations, and the other populations, and you look at the data on the digital divide, you see that only 45% of Latinos have access to the internet. Only 56%, and 56 may sound good, but when you think of 44% don't have access, that's when you start to worry, particularly in this information age. We also see that internet access, goes down by income level. So poorer families, and we have, close to, I think, 12.5% of Boston households are in the poverty range. Those populations don't have access. And if we are to really move to get forward as a city, we will have to bring everyone along. But technology access is increasing on the good news side. In 98, 23% of our population had access. In 2003, it had gone up to 60%. And a lot of that has happened simply because of the changes that happened in the market. Prices dropped, and people started to get more access. Interestingly, Bostonians are using technology for some very interesting purposes. The highest two uses are for information and education, to complete school assignments, or for email and instant messaging. followed by access to information at 74% and 80%, and at 60% access to products and services. So people are becoming far more internet savvy as they in their lifestyles. But really, as I said earlier, it's the in-home access that really is the important issue. And here we are actually picking up some data from two reports that are not mentioned in our report. One is the Department of Commerce's A Nation Online, and this shows that young people who live in lower income households are more likely and have in-home broadband access, are more likely to be civically engaged, visit website or bulletin boards to express their opinion. Lower income online teens are downloading study guides more frequently than higher income. So you can see that there's a positive impact of in-home broadband access. On the other hand, those with less in-home access are less likely to use information technology. And this is a Casey Foundation report, Digital Opportunity for America's Children, that shows that kids who have less in-home access actually use less internet at school, 63%. But only 36% compared to 63% from high-income households. So it's affecting the way we actually, these kids are accessing information elsewhere. In addition, the same thing shows up in terms of school assignments. And I think an interesting thing of note was that 66% of higher-income parents who have in-home access are using the internet to communicate with their teachers as compared to low-income parents. So we can see that while these skills are really creating the capacity or sort of affecting the capacity of how kids are using technology, we also know that the in-school tools are in transition, and I think this is a sort of an interesting way in which you can sort of see this affecting our day-to-day lives and our experiences. The skills that kids gain in school are becoming critical even as they go into the workforce. And in fact, at this point, I think there are close to 91% of the jobs, and maybe even more, that require technology skills. Technology is changing the nature of teaching and learning. And I think as many of us can sort of quietly confess that our children have a thing or two to teach us in terms of technology. And that skills gap is also showing up amongst in the education field as well, as teachers are more tech savvy than children are more tech savvy than their teachers. In addition, for our workforce to be truly competitive in the global economy, our schools will have, and our educational institutions will have to keep pace with this accelerating change. All of these will require ongoing financial investments. Now, our education, which is our key competitive advantage, is already threatened as other cities are either catching up with us or moving ahead. And at the time when investments in education are down, and if you think of the layering of additional costs on the education system, it's an issue that we have to worry about. A focus on science and technology education in the meantime is something that we are seeing growing in our communities, and many people from community organizations who are here will tell you about these wonderful programs that are happening, from in school and after school on robotics, networking, blogging, programming, kids working, participating, deeply engaged, and we are not really being able to capture their imagination and their minds. Boston must open itself to previously unimagined possibilities, and we think that this access to the internet, this broad access to the internet and playing with the internet is really going to open up the possibilities. Who would have thought our lifestyles would change the way they have today, but they have. And the challenge for us is going to be that we build out a data network that creates that opportunity for all, particularly the digitally excluded. In fact, a lot of research is showing that some of the most creative, innovative work is coming out of young people. It's coming out from developing countries, really happening on the edges of society. Improve service delivery for government and social services. enabled us to retain and strengthen our competitiveness and positions Boston to be a hotbed for innovation. I'm now going to turn it over to Brian Warraby, who's going to talk about the community energy and the experimentation.
Good morning. I'm very pleased to be here today. It's a pleasure to see all of you who we've worked so closely with over the past several months. Today's an important day in a step. Today's an important step in a process that began last May at the Boston Wireless Summit, an event hosted by the Museum of Science and co-sponsored by the Mayor's Office, the Boston Foundation, and City Councilor John Tobin. At that time, Mayor Menino said, "We've seen technology develop by leaps and bounds here in Boston, from leading the charge in providing internet access to schools, most recently developing free wireless internet access in our Main Streets districts. The Mayor pledged to work with partners in further advancing this technology as a tool to encourage economic and educational opportunity and improve the quality of life for all Boston residents." That was a commitment that all the attendees of the Wireless Summit have worked so hard to advance, and we certainly are much appreciative of your efforts. Since that time, the Museum of Science has been pleased to collaborate with the Boston Foundation and a wide range of community, corporate, and political leaders to create the report that you're seeing today. Excuse for a drink of water. The current state of municipal wireless is a concept that is changing on an almost daily basis. It is tempting to move quickly, but rather than reacting, we are proactively creating an idea for Boston with an aim for the future. An effort that will advance educational excellence, corporate competitiveness, and community connectivity. When one looks at programs underway in cities like San Francisco, Philadelphia, or Seattle, they will see a variety of design and deployment ideas. The common denominator for all wireless efforts has been a series of innovative community, municipal, and educational projects, a rich mosaic of complementary initiatives, efforts that allow for the successful deployment of citywide networks. The chart that you're showing is a list of community wireless projects that we looked at over the last several months. I'll go into some detail with them, but the main thing here that I'd like you to see is how much of the city is covered with efforts that have been underway from all of you in this room for many months and in some cases several years. We're fortunate to have a wide variety of such valuable programs, and I'd like to take a moment to highlight just a few. The Castle Square Tenants Development, it's a 500-unit housing development in the south end of Boston. Working with HUD, CTCnet, and Mass Housing, this wireless project has worked to provide a wide range of high-technology programs to the community's younger residents. With funding from the Boston Foundation, a research team from MIT Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Lab, they're working to install a wireless RoofNet-type system. Also in place is a technology, health, and multimedia program funded by Stride Right Foundation, and programs directed at younger women. Also, Tent City and Campfield Estates represent other established wireless projects that have been providing a wide range of high-technology programs to the younger people in the city of Boston through community technology centers that were referenced earlier. Dotwell is a nonprofit public partnership. 2 health centers in Dorchester. I've tried to put up their logos there so you all felt well represented. Working with Tropos Networks and the Boston Police Department, which I believe John alluded to in terms of the connection between the community, health, and public safety, directed mainly at the Ronan Park area right now. Dotwell is working to provide wireless access to residents in a 1-mile radius with an eye towards improving local health care, educational opportunities, and the development of essential technological skills. I've talked to the folks there, and they're extremely optimistic at the large current Wi-Fi user base that is existing, and we're appreciative of the input. 2 of the most visible citywide programs have been the Boston Public Library and its 26 neighborhood branches. Also, the 9 sites in Roxbury that are part of the Timothy Smith Network as designated virtual public library sites. Additionally, the recently launched Main Streets Wi-Fi project is bringing wireless technology to Boston's community and neighborhood commercial districts. The program is designed to create a free entry point for residents to access the internet, to help attract and retain visitors to the city, and educate and inform local residents and businesses on the use of applications of wireless technology. Piloted and recently launched in Roslindale, the Main Streets Wi-Fi projects are also planned for West Roxbury, Jamaica Plains Center and South, Washington Gateway, and Hyde Park. The Boston Main Streets program is an ideal organization to incubate some of our Wi-Fi ideas, and they've been very, very successful. On a corporate level, Newbury OpenNet was a pioneering effort and a national model for a Main Streets type initiative. The free internet cafe network for city residents, visitors, and businesses in the Newbury Street area has been demonstrating the value of universal wireless connectivity for some time now. And the Boston Wireless Advocacy Group has been an inspirational group in advancing a wide variety of community-based projects. As we consider these various snapshots, we must be certain not to confuse them for a laundry list. Each of these programs are reflective of many others, threads which must be woven together with an innovative educational and technological infrastructure capable of supporting a citywide wireless network. This current map is a list of the technology centers that we currently have in Boston. It shows the Timothy Smith centers, the CTC Net centers, the Museum of Science and Intel Computer Clubhouses, as a way of showing how much inherent support we have for our efforts in the community for educating young people in technology, which is a critical piece of supporting any of our Wi-Fi build-outs. As I mentioned, the Timothy Smith Centers, CTC Net, and Tech Mission offer quality technology training for 84 separate locations, providing over 1 million hours of computer access. These centers' programs include job training, educational enrichment, and other community-based initiatives. An equally valuable asset is the Museum of Science, and I think you all know I could probably talk for hours and hours about the museum's wireless programs and undertakings that we have for education, but rather I'd like to throw the spotlight for a moment in Cambridge to MIT. They occupy a unique position in a rapidly evolving communications landscape, and many of the programs that we're talking about today that you've all worked on in the community were innovated by MIT. It's essential that our future plans include leadership and education in the spirit of innovation as provided by institutions like MIT and the Museum of Science. There's that slide. I'll hold for pictures and the for MIT. That's for those of you who are familiar with it. Oh, the pointer is gone. That would be a innards of a router on the bottom there. As Boston moves into this next phase of wireless development, it is important not to understand that these projects will not become obsolete. They will instead be used as valuable information to inform the larger citywide network that lies ahead. These projects represent thousands of hours of work and innovation and imagination and hard work on the part of hundreds of dedicated people, individuals who are determined to provide the city with the tools necessary to develop essential educational economic programs. They will change life in our city forever. They provide the Wireless Task Force upcoming with the experience necessary for the design and deployment of a citywide network. While some cities have received media attention in recent months, Boston's technology partnerships have been working for years, doing the practical work necessary to construct a municipal system that will work best for our city. It's been a pleasure to be a part of this collaborative effort to create an innovative wireless communications network for Boston. Our work is a reflection of the spirit of leadership that has existed in this city for decades, leadership that has rightfully earned Boston its reputation for being one of the great centers of innovation in the world. Ultimately, we must resist the temptation to view ourselves as entered into a great race. One of the first things our city can do is to change the measure by which wireless projects deem to be success or failure. We are not competing with San Francisco or Philadelphia, Tempe or Seattle, or other municipalities closer to home. We want to learn from the work that others are doing, and first and foremost, connect people together. Achieving a wireless solution for Boston is the first step in a process that will ultimately extend far beyond our city boundaries and benefit ourselves, our children, and future Bostonians. I'd like to turn it over to Michael Cudahy now, one of our principal writers of the report, to highlight what's been happening in some of the other cities around us. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here this morning. As of this morning, 186 American cities and counties have deployed or are in the process of deploying wireless communications networks. 56 are regional or citywide, 29 are city hot zones, 59 are planned deployments, and 42 are for municipal or public safety use only. International efforts to design, develop, and construct new generations of wireless technologies are moving at accelerated rates as well. These efforts have created an innovative environment that is transforming the very nature of global socioeconomic relationships. Walls that have separated cities and counties and countries for decades have been torn down and will never be rebuilt. As Boston moves to design and construct its own wireless network, we must be aware of other projects around this country and the world, while making certain that we remain focused on the needs and expectations of the city's residents and visitors. I would like to talk briefly about 5 municipal projects, 3 American, 1 Asian, and 1 European, that will give you a sense of the work that is being done around this country and the world. On August 16th of last year, San Francisco Mayor Gavin Newsom made the commitment to bring digital inclusion to his city by ensuring universal, affordable Internet access and hardware, community-sensitive training and support, and relevant content to all city residents and visitors, with particular attention being paid to the needs of the city's low-income and disadvantaged residents. San Francisco, whose 47 square mile size is almost identical to Boston, has a population of slightly over 744,000, with the cost to build its commercial network being budgeted between $8 and $12 million. San Francisco has received a great deal of media attention in recent months when Internet giant Google offered to assume all construction costs. Over 20 other proposals have been submitted as well, with the proposal deadline scheduled to be February 21st. A final decision is expected to be announced shortly thereafter. In late January, Wireless Philadelphia, a nonprofit corporation created by the city, signed a 10-year contract with Earthlink to implement a 135 square mile citywide wireless network. Under the terms of the agreement, no city dollars will be used to fund the building of the wireless mesh infrastructure, expected to be operational by the fourth quarter of 2006. The system will provide inexpensive high-speed Internet access, open access for multiple competing service providers at a wholesale rate of $9 per month, roaming capabilities for providers of hotspot access, free Internet access in some parks and public spaces, daily and weekly access for occasional users and visitors, and small business connectivity that can serve as a wireless T1 alternative. Earthlink will help Wireless Philadelphia promote digital inclusion by offering qualifying Philadelphia residents discounted Internet access at approximately $10 per month. Retail rates for other residential subscribers are expected to be under $20 per month. The cost to construct a system capable of providing service to Philadelphia's 1,470,000 residents is estimated to be between $10 and $18 million. Within the next few weeks, the city of Tempe, Arizona will activate its more than 400 access points across the city's 40 square mile area as part of its WISE Tempe Metropolitan Wireless Network. Designed to serve the city's population of over 160,000, WISE Tempe will operate dual systems, one designed to provide municipal and public safety services, with a parallel network supplying Internet access to the city's residents and visitors. Constructed in collaboration between Mobile Pro and NeoSearch, the city will use Access One network outdoor wireless system technology and will be a commercial, ad revenue, and subscription-driven network. Tempe's CIO, Dave Heck, estimates construction costs to be between $7 and $8 million. The Tempe system will provide a free, walled garden of public information and commercial websites with additional services provided at monthly subscriber rates in the area of $20 per month. As part of its Cyber City campaign, Taipei, Taiwan, thank you, Gita, is posed to become the largest city in the world to have a citywide wireless network. In a program similar to Philadelphia's, Taipei has opted to let the private sector build and run its network so as to avoid the investment of taxpayer dollars. In August 2004, the government reached an agreement with QWare Systems. QWare, in turn, hired Nortel Networks of Brampton, Ontario, to build, equip, and maintain the city's wireless infrastructure. QWare's investment of approximately $93 million provides service to Taipei's 2,619,000 residents who live in a metropolitan area of 26 square miles. The company offered free service called Wi-Fi last year, but this month began charging users the equivalent of about $12 a month, currently the shortest term available, with an annual package being offered at a discounted rate. Taipei Mayor Ma Ying-zhu expects the network will be fully operational by the middle of 2006 and will increase the cutting-edge competitiveness of his city, making, quote, the life of our citizens even more convenient. Within the last few days, the diminutive city of Derry, Northern Ireland, announced that it is activating a wireless network to serve the 17th century walled city's 2.5 square mile area and its population of over 83,000 citizens. Evolution Systems from Cheshire has installed the system, working with California-based Tropos Networks, whose president and CEO, Ron Segui, is a former chairman of the Massachusetts Telecommunications Council. The network is a collaboration between the local council, the University of Ulster-Magee, and the Northwest Institute of Further and Higher Education. The private sector is actively engaged in the project as well through the Wireless Technology Center, which will provide local businesses with independent technological advice. The Northern Irish system has been designed to meet a variety of local needs. While it is being constructed to provide wireless broadband coverage for the entire city center, encouraging local businesses to develop new services and applications to utilize the wireless working environment, education of the city's younger residents is also a primary objective. In recent years, Derry has been losing many of its young people to other cities and countries because of its lack of a modern technological infrastructure. Community leaders are confident that the deployment of a local wireless network will keep many younger members of the local workforce at home, while creating an economic environment attractive to businesses from around the world. Derry will be one of the first cities in Europe to provide full coverage with its network now running in both the University of Ulster and the Northwest Institute of Higher Education. The e-tourism component will be operational within the next few weeks. As we look around this country and the world, the question is no longer if a city will build a wireless network, but rather when and how. Educational excellence, corporate competitiveness, the ability for small businesses to prosper and grow, and an increase in governmental efficiencies will all be tied to the power and reliability of affordable citywide wireless systems. The city of Boston finds itself at an important moment in its financial, educational, and community future. The commitment to the construction of a local network has been demonstrated. Now we must draw on our wealth of human and technological resources to make certain that the system we build will be a model of innovation for other cities and the world. Thank you.
You know, over the last few years, Boston has been severely criticized in some circles for for having institutions, both government and private, that don't cooperate. And I think that what we see here today really is a wonderful example of the fact that it can work. We should all be very pleased about that. Before opening it up to questions here this morning, I would like to introduce all of the members of the task force. And I'm not sure how many of you are here. I don't know all of you, but I do see some. Joyce Plotkin has already been introduced. Pam Reeves. Would you just like to say something, Pam? Terrific. Let's see who. Nivea Colon is here. There you are. Would you like just to introduce yourself and say a couple words?
I currently work and represent the residents of Roxbury, And I am a prime example of how internet access can actually help you to build a future because of e-learning. Thanks.
There's another member here.
We're looking forward to getting going and getting Wi-Fi available for the people of the city of Boston. Thanks.
Hi, my name's Sharon Gillette. I'm a researcher at MIT, and as it happens, the area of my research is municipal broadband. So I'm delighted to be part of the task force and look forward to helping bring more Wi-Fi to more of Boston.
Seeing Steve Gaggs here. Well, there's another one.
I'm Robin Chase, and I'm really excited about figuring how we can maximize Boston's benefits for its citizens and maximize the assets that Boston brings to this great endeavor. So I'm really excited about it.
Is this on? Yes? Yes, thank you. Martin Levitin, Vice President, Nearreach Wireless. As you pointed out in the presentation, we are the company that have deployed in a public-private partnership the network in Tempe, Arizona, and are in the process of the deploying networks in Sacramento, Akron, Ohio, Chandler, etc. Since I happen to be a born and bred Bostonian and live presently in New Hampshire, I'm tickled pink to see that Boston is undertaking the activities to begin to deploy a wireless network. So first, in order to help, on behalf of Nearreach Wireless, I'd like to extend an invitation to the committee to visit Tempe, Arizona. The network there, by the end of this month, will be fully deployed. It makes it the largest fully deployed wireless, fully Wi-Fi network in the U.S., and we'd be more than pleased to share our experience, and you can chat with Dave Heck, who's been running the project from the city of Tempe, and get whatever experiences from the government side as well. So afterwards I'll come up and we can get connected, and we'd be more than pleased to have you visit us in Tempe. As a second note, there's been some discussion of Boston being a technological leader here today. It's probably a little-known fact that this whole Muni Wi-Fi business was actually pioneered by a Boston-based company. The name of the company is Evergreen Open Broadband. I founded the company here in Boston a couple of years ago. We were eventually acquired by Mobile Pro, went off to deploy the network in Tempe, etc. So there are strong municipal wireless roots in Boston historically as well. So thanks for the time, and I'll come up afterwards and see you.
Sandy Pascal from Wentworth Institute of Technology, and our students and faculty in particular are very excited about reaching out to the neighborhoods and helping them move forward in wireless. Thanks.
See, Steve Gagg is here, is he not?
But I've talked to you on the phone, and we're raring to go. So let's get moving.
And Michael O.
Michael O. from Tech Superpowers. We created the NewberryOpen.net, also co-founder of the Boston Wireless Advocacy Group, community member, I guess, on the task force, and very excited to be involved and provide a community voice, particularly for what I term community networks that have existed for a number of years, on the task force.
Terrific. Are there any other members of the task force out there that we've missed?
Yes, Rick.
Oh, excuse me.
My name is Kevin McCluskey. I'm representing Harvard University on the task force, and we appreciate that kind invitation to visit Tempe, Arizona, but we'd have to leave this wonderful weather if we did that. So but I think all of us look forward to working on the task force and trying to realize the wonderful possibilities that can emerge from all of our work together.
Now, are there any other members of the task force? As you can see, the task force represents a very broad spectrum of the city, and we, as I mentioned earlier, really need as much feedback from the community that we can get, and we'd like to throw the meeting open now for questions, comments, concerns. Howard Anderson, you're always good for a good question and a lot of comment.
In the 70s, Kevin White cable contract to Cablevision for $2 a month. If you've looked at your cable bill lately, it's certainly not $2 a month. You've raised the issue that broadband is now moved to a right from a privilege. We really can't contain that technology. So once we put out broadband, and the definition of broadband gets bigger each year, you're also saying that voice communications will be free or low cost. Even cable will be free and low cost. And I'm questioning whether government belongs in the business of competing. And second, it's not the installation cost, it's the maintenance cost that's going to be enormous. So one, how do we solve this issue? Are we going to hobble the technology not to do things like voice over IP, or are we going to allow the technology? Two, does this represent that the City of Boston is now back in the cable business, the communications business, competing essentially with Comcast and Verizon, which are tax-paying institutions?
Howard, if we had answers to all those questions, we wouldn't need a task force. You're raising absolutely the right questions, and as I tried to say in my opening remarks, part of our challenge is going to be to figure out the segments of the market that can be left to the commercial vendors and what should be available to the community. And I wouldn't stand here today, and I don't think anybody else on the task force would claim to have answers to the very profound question that you're asking, and we'll start to address them. I would suggest that. And whether it's not for a foregone conclusion. In fact, I think it's a totally open question as to who owns the system, because it's not just a question. You've raised the maintenance question, but the technology is so dynamic that in 5 years it's going to be a different system than the one we install next year. So that provision for that has got to be built into the structure that we set up. We've taken note of your question, and we'll get back in the future. We'll put you on the committee, Howard. Question.
My name's Shravan Nirad. I left the technical staff at MIT in 1989 and went to Chapel Hill for 6 years, and Eugene, Oregon for 5 years, and Portland, Oregon for 5 years, and and came back last year. And in those 16 years, I've been working consistently in digital divide efforts. And the statistic that I didn't see represented in your numbers was the penetration of desktops in those low-income families, because it seems to me that those households are not going to be able to take advantage of Wi-Fi if they don't have desktops, or if their desktops are old, 16 bits or earlier. We still see people in Portland, when I was leaving there, that are operating their email off of dial-up and Apple IIe's, which will never have wireless access. So how are you expecting the community to support the penetration of desktops and the education and support of people so that they can maintain those systems in the home so their children can have access for their homework assignments?
Let me respond to that. The data that you saw was actually internet access. It's not computer access, yes. And in fact, as you will see in the report, we have sort of pointed to the fact that the importance of both training and hardware access. And there are programs. The City of Boston has developed some programs. There is the $100 computer. I think these are issues that we are going to have to think about as we go forward. There aren't, I think in general, the cost of hardware has come down to the point that people can afford it. There are bank loan programs, no interest programs. Those kinds of programs can be developed in large. So I think the access issue is really going to be, I think the real problem is in the cost of paying for ongoing internet access, not so much the one-time cost or the every 3-year cost of buying the computer.
Part of your question gets back to Howard's thought about whether this is a right or a privilege. And we are not starting out with the idea that everybody should have a computer, that the government should provide everybody with a computer and everybody should have broadband access. What we'd like to do is to make it as affordable as possible.
Well, I understand that, but as long as the schools are assigning homework that require children who are very As long as the schools are assigning homework, and I'm experiencing this in Cambridge with my son who's in public school there, that require children to either have internet access in the home or go to a library when they're too young to go by themselves. Personally, I'm a single parent, and it's hard for me to escort my child to the library on a daily basis. This is going to be an issue where it may not be a privilege or a right, you know, where that question comes in, but it is a requirement. So what are we saying to the low-income parents in Boston that we're putting their children at a disadvantage via our curricula if we don't make this available to everybody?
Vivian, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I've been running a program for the last 6 years called Technology Goes Home, which offers the opportunity for parents to actually purchase an affordable computer. The internet access has always been the barrier. Many of the low-income developments in the area, believe it or not, were not cabled because people could not, it wasn't profitable, if you may, for these vendors. And so there are still in our neighborhood low-income developments that don't have cable or any kind of internet access. And so, you know, they do have computers. We have been graduating a lot of those residents, and they do have computers, but they don't have the access. So it works both ways.
You know, another program that I want to highlight, and maybe Steve can speak to that, is the Technology Goes Home at School effort of the Mayor's Office. The city has really been very forward thinking about it. And Jennifer, Steve, would you like to make a comment on that? Because there's some very interesting work going on in Boston to try to address that issue.
Technology Goes Home at School is a program that's in 43 public schools in Boston, and we're graduating about 500 families per year. It's a sister program to the community program called Technology Goes Home. It uses the same model in terms of intergenerational training. A parent and a child have somewhere between 25 and 40 hours of training how to use the computer. In the school side, we make sure that the teacher, the classroom teacher, is using the same curriculum that they do in the daytime program with the child, so that the parent gets to understand a little bit more about what's happening in the classroom and gets to know the teacher better. We then, each parent makes a decision as to whether or not they want to buy a new computer through the no interest, no down payment program through Bank of America. So still a relatively expensive item for people to buy, but the loan at somewhere between $15 to $18 per month makes it more affordable. But that's one program that we're working on in the city to bring computers into the home.
David?
I'm David Ellis, President Emeritus of the Museum of Science. I would encourage the panel to have a dream, to look out 5, 10 years, 15 years. There were days when portions of roads were paved and portions weren't, depending on what town you were in. There were days when we had to have private schools and there weren't public schools. So I would hope that we would really dream a bit, recognize we can't go there immediately, but hope that we could recognize that information needs to become, I believe strongly, readily available, accessible, and easily so, as well as financially possible.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning. I'm Arthur Jordan with SimDesk Technologies, and as an out-of-towner, flew in from Pittsburgh last night. I want to congratulate the task force. A lot of neat things happening here. SimDesk is a on-demand computing company out of Houston that works with a lot of the municipalities that you mentioned, providing on-demand capabilities for Wi-Fi, citywide, population-based implementations in places like Chicago and Houston. One of the key points, and I think you made it, Geeta, is that one of the huge reasons for having this, is it a right or a privilege? Of course, it's a right. It should be provided as a utility. much as like when we turn on the lights or turn on the faucet and water comes out. We should do that with Wi-Fi, and for cost advantages. Take it from $50 a month to what it could be if it was a utility city service. My question is that once we build this and we achieve those economies of scale, my question is, what do we do with it when it comes to digital divide in education? Young lady spoke about access and the cost. There's great programs going on at the mayor's office, but that could be, from what I read, around $400, $500, $600 in terms of software. What do those kids do when they go out and find things on the internet? How are they going to type those homework assignments, spreadsheets for the small business? Those things are still $500, $600. Now they can access it from anywhere. It's a wonderful first step, and I really congratulate the city of Boston. But what do we do with the network so that we can get the cost down of the content and the tools that the citizens of Boston need now that we've solved the access issue and gotten it down to what a utility cost should be at $5 or $10 a month? Has the commission or task force thought ahead about technologies that can provide this capability for Boston citizens at around $5 a year for its small businesses and its students? Or are we going to still be asking folks to take out loans and spend $500, $600 for the word processing, instant messaging, file sharing that they might require? Again, it's a question for the long term in the future. And the first thing I want to say, I want to congratulate you on this vision and putting it in place. But what happens next, a year, year and a half out?
I'd say we're all cheering for open software. Microsoft won't last forever.
Well, I'm not here to take on Microsoft. I mean, if you look at me,
Neither are we.
Oh, good. I'm all of 5'5" or 5'6". I'm not a very tall guy, and I don't have the broad shoulders to go out and to Redmond, Washington. But my organization, my company, when we have this in citywide rollouts like in Chicago and in Houston, where you have 10 million users who from any internet-enabled device in those cities, or the entire state of Indiana, for instance, or in places like Corpus Christi, where we're about to launch a pilot with their Wi-Fi initiative, any internet-enabled device, any cell phone that can access the internet, can now enable a user of the Wi-Fi network to get to their data. And if they use Microsoft, that's great. There are technologies that interoperate with Microsoft. But to get these tools at about $5, $10 a month so that the kids really can't, so it's not just a search engine they have access to, so they can do something with it, they can collaborate, small business. The technology is there. It's been done.
Well, we'll certainly look into that. Next question.
Good morning. Bernie Margolis, president of the Boston Public Library, and quite excited to be here today. As most of you know, and was mentioned earlier, our public library has been a pioneer in this area, the first city library in America to be completely wireless. We've been that way for several years now. I want to invite everyone, if you haven't availed yourself of that service, come play with it, experiment with it. We've been pushing the envelope, so most of our branches you can stand outside or stand on the street corner and access the internet, not even coming into our buildings. I want to build on David Ellis's comment. There was a day when the streets were private in America. You had to pay to take your horse or carriage down them. We decided that there was a public good to be realized by having a common network of roads for safety and for communication and for to enable our kids to get to school. What we're doing today in terms of pushing that envelope to Wi-Fi, internet access for everyone, really just builds on the public good that is really bedrock for American democracy. So if we want to be safe, if we want to be secure, if we want to have rich communities with well-educated kids and prosperous businesses, expanding this kind of access and capability really is essential. And the library is pleased to be a model. Come on, we have 27 branches actually completely wireless, and we invite everybody to experiment with what we've been able to do. We know a few of the problems, some of them have been mentioned. There obviously are problems today about security and privacy.
and we want to be sure that those are tended to. But I think all those barriers can be surmounted, and we all can be enriched as a result. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Bob Keys, Boston Area Wireless Internet Alliance, which is the area's oldest and largest community wireless group. And I also represent XA Networks, a company I founded to create wireless equipment. Two questions I have for you. I've been working with people from the city of Cambridge on their own wireless initiative, and I'm interested in seeing what the city of Boston might have in mind for cooperation and interoperation with not just Cambridge but Brookline and some of the other communities in the area. And my second question is, in Cambridge we have the idea that a base level of internet access should be free, and we're wondering how that might work in Boston and what the thoughts are relating to that.
Let me answer your second question first. We have not addressed that yet, and we don't know whether it'll be free or modest charge. We're just simply not there. The objective is to make it as available to as many people as possible. On your first question, that a key player in the thinking that's gone on here has been the Massachusetts Technology Collaborative, and Mitch Adams is going to be on our task force. And I know that he and the collaborative are very interested in making sure that what goes on here is really seen as a pilot for what would go on in the whole state. In fact, Pat Larkin is here. Pat is part of Mitch's team, and Pat was responsible for wiring up the Berkshires under the aegis of the state. You know, tell us about that program and why it was so important.
Yeah, I think that for those of you that don't know, the Massachusetts Technology Collaborative is a state economic development agency. I serve as the director of its economic development arm, the John Adams Innovation Institute. And we've been working with communities in Massachusetts probably for about 10 years now, more so in underserved regions around the state, to help them wrestle with questions around broadband deployment. We also sponsored a broadband commission, of which Joyce Plotkins was one of our distinguished members and has been very involved in our work for 10 years. And I think that Joyce represents a wonderful leader to help wrestle with the issues that we're facing here. Clearly, what we would like to do at the Mass Technology Collaborative is work with Boston and with all the communities in the state to really get some understandings around the issues that we're wrestling with, the issues that were profiled in the program. I thought that Mike did a wonderful job outlining what was going on elsewhere in the country and in the world. And frankly, last week when we met with our governing board, having been aware of the initiative in the task force, they asked us to commission a study that would take the preliminary work that Mike has talked about in terms of what are different communities doing and try to bore down more significantly around what the business models really are, what the technology options are, how are municipalities wrestling with these issues. Clearly, as I think everyone senses today, we're on the edge of a broadband breakthrough, we believe, and it is being led by the municipalities who have to wrestle with fundamental issues in their communities. And so we would like to work both with the task force, with other communities to assist with that baseline understanding around what other regions are doing, best practices, and support the work that Joyce and that task force is doing. So I think that it is a statewide effort from our perspective and would work in terms of disseminating that information.
Thanks, Pat. In the back.
Hi. First of all, I want to thank the Boston Foundation and the task force for putting together these important meetings. Thank you very much. A couple of things I'd like to put out there. First of all, I want to second the emphasis of and the importance of the Boston Public Library network system as a model which is already in place You've got 28 nodes throughout the city, basically, in the branches. By definition, they are in every community in Boston. You do a quarter-mile radius from each of those nodes, and you've basically got the city covered. The library systems were the innovators in data networks going way back into the 60s. And if you think of Boston as a learning city, then obviously the library networks are a key part of that. And so I just want to re-emphasize the importance of looking at the model of what's happening with the Boston Public Library networks. The second idea I want to throw out there is to expand the thinking beyond just data and to also look at energy and the distributed energy model and the distributed municipal / private energy model, which is happening all over the country in terms of like small-scale wind and solar, where you have private individuals and companies putting a little bit of energy into the grid. It's the exact same type of thing as what you have here. You begin to have a distributed model of lots of players putting in their little part into the grid, the data grid, the energy grid, and those two are going to combine together very shortly anyway. And one of the examples I would like you to look at in that space is Copenhagen, Denmark. This is an energy model, not a data model, but nonetheless I think it's applicable. They have those 20 windmills in the harbor there. You've seen pictures of them, which bring power into the city. The key thing here is that windmill array is a public privately owned array. 10 of the windmills are owned privately, 10 are owned by the city. But really the key point is that the service contract for all 20 of them is a single service contract. So the city and the private privately owned windmills are all serviced uniformly. So there's no segregation between how the privately owned windmills and how the publicly owned windmills are serviced. And I think that could be a very key model in terms of data networks as well.
Thank you.
Great. This is a great collection of people. It says a lot about the city. Joyce Plopkin want to also say I have a picture in my office from '96. Micaiah George, who graduated from this school, you recognize the work of my organization, and he went on to make a career in technology, Micaiah from Mattapan. The corporate world used to be the only folks who use cell phones. BlackBerries now are associated with the corporate world, and it's interesting to see the anxiety being created about its uncertain future. I think wireless palm-top devices are very important for the nonprofit world. And Boston, given that it has a unique concentration of nonprofits, can be really innovative in terms of communicating, documenting, real-time, email, video, all sorts of things, meetings and contacts, and help the nonprofit world be incredibly efficient and lead other sectors. I'm wondering in the future, now that this infrastructure with Wi-Fi is being rolled out, if there's a thought of palm-top wireless devices or how nonprofits can innovate. And there's a nonprofit leader right here, why don't you hold your hand up, who is using his device throughout this meeting that he paid for himself, and that's not sustainable. Thank you. Oh, John Warner, Executive Director, Citizen Schools, Boston.
Thank you.
I'm Joni Falk from Turk in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I'm thrilled to hear all of what's going on in the libraries and in the museums, and Gita speaking about how it's now going to be in people's homes, which I think is so important for children and their education. But I just hope that the task force won't leave schools out of this. I haven't heard anything about middle schools and high schools in Boston being included, and I hope they're on the map.
No, they're clearly part of the thinking. They're in the equation. And it is a key factor to keep that in mind. Other questions?
Thanks. I'm Kate Snow. I'm currently an independent consultant, but part of the Boston community technology community for a long time. And I actually just want to ask the practical question of how you will be continuing to both report back on the task force's work, and how you continue to solicit input, and how the information will be distributed, so that we all can continue to participate in the conversation and know how things are developing.
We don't have an answer to that yet. We're having our first organizational meeting next Tuesday evening, and I could imagine a lot of different answers to your question. We hope to have a final report in the middle of the summer. Whether there will be an interim report, I just don't know. But I think that there will be an email address that you're all welcome to send in comments and suggestions to, because we really do need the feedback, and some sort of a website that you can find out what's going on would be very useful.
Yeah,
but the decision on that has not been made.
Oh,
that's
thank you.
Personal thinking.
Looking forward.
Okay. In the back there.
Hi, my name is Shay, and I'm actually a resident of Dorchester, and I have no affiliations with any organizations. And so I decided I thought I would share just some of the comments and thoughts that went through my mind as I saw this presentation, because perhaps these are some areas that may not have been discussed, or maybe they are and they just weren't presented in this presentation. So some of the questions that came to my mind were things like, well, how will having a whole city that's wireless affect our environment? So that's one question. And I'm not expecting these answers today. I'm just sharing them so that perhaps the task force can go back and think about some of these things. But how is that going to affect our environment? Also, with the industry moving towards fiber optics for future television and internet access, how will all of this affect what you all are trying to plan? And I also was remembering how there's a law and legislation, federal legislation, where they're going to turn off the regular type of TV. What is that? Audio? What is that called? Analog. Thank you. Analog television, and force everyone to go to the high definition television. So I was like thinking, well, how is this going to affect what you all are trying to do to bring this to the Boston area? Then I started thinking about and reflecting on the children, and of course the children need to be prepared for jobs for the future. But I started thinking about some of the living rooms I've been in lately, where many folks who are baby boomers whose income was between $15,000 and $29,000, who don't qualify for a lot of these programs, who don't have access, who don't have computers, and they can't get it through these programs, who are also starting to lose their jobs for a variety of reasons, and are not able to get new jobs because they don't have the technology skills that they need, but can't use the technology programs because they're over income, and also, because they were working poor, were not able to have enough savings to pay for their own internet access, which means they will go into, their so-called retirement age, probably becoming the new homeless because they won't be able to afford where they live anymore. So I was just wondering if, where does all of that fit into some of this planning?
Well, those are all excellent questions, and I can't say that we have answers to them yet, but they will be given consideration. We promised to get you out of here by 11 o'clock. There was one question way up in the back that was eager to be heard from, and we'll make that the last one.
Hi. Hello? My name is Sun Win, and something's been bugging me, and that's the internet cost isn't that much. It's $15 by Verizon right now, and so this misconception of like, oh, it's $50, $40 or something like that. It's just bugging.
Okay, thank you. There's one more. It's an eager person.
Hi, I'm Dayani, and I work for an advocacy organization called Healthcare for All. I just want to actually give a different perspective of what this can actually do to all of us. I have been implementing a tool called Real Benefits, which is a web-based tool that helps people to apply for healthcare programs and food stamps, so public benefits. And having this service available will just help us to reach out to more people. So there's a lot of organizations doing home care visits, but without internet access, you cannot even have a laptop accessible. So I just want to say thank you, and that this can actually be helping more people to access public benefits as well. Thank you.
Now we absolutely have the last question. Shoot.
I teach information policy at the Kennedy School of Government. I have several short questions. One, is it more appropriate to focus on a particular kind of technology, i.e. wireless, than on the basic service, universal access to high-speed broadband, which is the purpose of the wireless in the first place? because other technologies like optical fiber and whatever else may emerge may be even more appropriate. Two, I'd like to point out that internet time is accelerated time. Allegedly, it's the same as dog years. 1 year equals 7 years. I haven't heard any timetable, a deadline for when the city expects to have universal access to wireless. But I read in the paper a couple of months ago that the mayor's office was thinking maybe 4 years, which may mean 28 internet years. Is that not too long a period of time? And why is there no mention of WiMAX, or is that just implied? In terms of having access, wireless will only give you the potential of doing it. You do need internet appliances or PCs. I'd point out that MIT is developing a $100 computer with scope and scale. The cost of that may come down to the cost of books. So, but another essential is having essential literacy, not just text and prose literacy, but networking literacy. Will the schools adequately provide that, because they're not doing it in traditional literacy? And if you look at the reading proficiency among fourth graders or adults in greater Boston area. What is the definition of high speed? Is it 1 to 3 megabits per second, or is it 10 to 100, or is it a 1,000 megabytes per second like they're using in North Korea, South Korea, and in Japan? Based on the speed, will determine what services can be made available. What services will be considered essential in terms of e-government, e-distance learning? There's no discussion of that either. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for the questions. They'll be given consideration. Just one comment, that the good news about building out this system is that this is not like wiring the city for cable. This is a question of attaching appliances to phones, telephone and electric poles, so that once a decision is made, it should roll out fairly rapidly. And once a decision is made, I mean, to think of this getting done in a year is not out of the question. That would certainly be our objective. Now, I would like to invite you all to walk across the street, literally, just down to which direction am I? Down that way, down to Castle Square. The Castle Square group has invited us to go and look at their hotspot and how it is operating. So any of you would like to take advantage of that? Who is leading that effort here in the room?
Tom McGonigal, right here.
There we are.
Ben Franklin, here, right here, to the right.
Oh, Tom, okay, I'm sorry. Tom McGonigal, welcome. So Tom will take you over to Castle Square and show you how this can work in a local community. And again, thank you all for coming. We will make an announcement shortly about the question of communication and how you can get in touch with the task force, because it certainly makes sense for us to have a website. Thank you again, and we look forward to staying in touch with you.